Hi Greenfield families, and welcome to another episode of G-Talk. Today we're going to be talking about exam strategies. I'd like to introduce my guest speaker, Mr. Thomas Maybanks. He is the head of the Global Citizens Program.
Hello everyone, thanks for having me. Excited to talk about this. It's a topic I have a lot of experience with, and I've spent a lot of time in my life dealing with exams and the pressures that come with them. So. Yeah.
It's really important to acknowledge the stress that students face when they are taking exams. Not only the pressure they put on themselves, but maybe from parents or teachers or future goals that they may have. Stress can have a really negative impact on students' performance when they're taking their exams, and actually creates a really bad relationship with exams, which doesn't need to be there. In this episode of G-Talk, we're going to be discussing some really useful strategies that students can implement before they take their exams, during their exams, and after. So, Tom, what was your experience of taking exams when you were growing up?
I have quite a long and complex history with exams. I mean, obviously, as a school child, I had exams just like everybody else, onto university, and then even now, as an adult, I still occasionally take exams. Not only to further my own professional development, but to actually see what the students go through. On top of that, I also write exams and mark exams. So exams are a big part of my life in a strange way. I would say that with exams, especially growing up as a school student, I found them really easy, unfortunately for me. And I say unfortunately because it kind of set me up. It set a trap for me in my later life. My experience of having an easy time at school with exams directly related to having a harder time once I reached university, because I never really learned the self-discipline and focus that I should have learned at school, so that I could achieve higher marks when I went to university level. That had to come later, and as an adult it became much harder to gain that discipline. Now as a teacher, that's something that I really focus on a lot when I'm teaching students about taking exams. And I really think it's something that parents and students alike need to understand about school exams, that they are not the be-all and end-all, but they really are a learning and a focus point for moving forward.
Thank you, that's so interesting. So as a teenager or even as a university student, if you did have stress when you were taking exams, what kind of things did you do to cope?
Again, maybe I'm a bit of an outlier, but I was never very stressed at school. I wasn't that person. You've got to find a happy middle ground, or rather happy medium, when it comes to preparing for your exams. You have to have a bit of perspective. You have to recognize that while exams are important in terms of assessing where you're at, you also have to recognize that it's not the whole world. It's not the end of the world if you have a bad exam. That perspective, I feel, is really, really key when studying, when preparing, when facing challenges, not only exams, but all challenges in life. You have multiple opportunities every single day to make a change and to develop yourself as a person. You shouldn't put all that pressure onto one event in your life, like exams.
Thank you so much. So what tips do you have that students can try out prior to actually taking their exam that can help them to cope better when they go into their exam?
I would say I have kind of two philosophies rather than tips per se when it comes to getting ready for your exams. First one is really a way of thinking, and that is kind of summarized in don't let perfection be the enemy of good. What I mean by this is that many people, if they don't have the perfect setting in their minds to have this perfect setup, if they don't have that, they can't study. I feel like that is probably the worst thing you can do. Good is usually more than enough. Perfect is usually almost impossible to attain. So by letting yourself require perfection, you're harming your ability to just get to good. My second, set SMART goals. Your goals should be realistic for you. If you set a goal of studying 12 to 15 hours a week for your exams, that's not specific, that's not measurable. Well, it is measurable, but it's not realistic, it's not timely. Again, you fall into the trap of appealing to perfection. Rather set yourself something shorter, more realistic, 10, 15 minutes a day, right? You do that, that's maybe an hour and a half extra to 2 hours a week that you weren't doing previously. Other than that, I would say find people who are talking about the subjects you have to study who are interesting to you. We have a whole world of resources out there these days. Lectures on YouTube, there's all sorts of academic resources online. You shouldn't be placing all of your emphasis on one teacher. We have a world's worth of teachers via the internet at our fingertips at all times now. And you would be foolish to take only one person's perspective on the subject or the field that you are studying when you can have everybody's.
Thank you. That was really, really interesting. I think just some extra things to add to that is when you are preparing to take your exams, don't underestimate the power of revising after your lessons for just even 5 minutes after your class. Just go over what you've done, write a few key points down, write those notes down, so that when you are reaching that crucial study time before your exams, you're able to look at those notes that you made in the moment and reflect on that. Another thing is whether you're taking online exams or whether you are taking in-person exams, make sure to arrive early. There's nothing worse than rushing into the exam, your mind is all frazzled, and then your thoughts are unclear. So make sure to arrive early when you're getting to your exam. Additionally, when you are taking your exam, make sure to listen to the instructions from your examiner. They may have some very important things. Maybe it's turning over the last page to see a last question. Maybe it's about a time change. Whatever it is, make sure to actually listen to those instructions. And another thing that I found that's always helped me when taking exams, and especially if you're taking something scientific or that requires formulas, that's to do a memory dump as soon as you get into the exam. So ask for an extra piece of paper, and anything that you have stored up in your mind, write it all down. Get it onto that piece of paper early so it's there, and if you need to, you can reflect back on that throughout your exam. As an educator, something that I often worry about with my students is how they're actually coping while they're taking their exam. So often you'll see students leaving out answers, and it's the worst thing as a teacher when you're marking it and you know your students know the answers, but they've left it out. So they can often leave out answers. Maybe they don't have time to actually finish the exam, or maybe they even give up before the exam has begun. So what advice do you have for students while they are taking the exam?
First thing, make sure you can see the clock. Make sure that if you need glasses or if you are short-sighted, you request that you sit near the front so that you can see the clock. Secondly, know your skills. Know what you're good at. Know what you find easy. As soon as you get your paper, find the things that are easiest for you. Attempt to tackle those first. I always tell my students to bring a stapler with them, and this may seem very odd, but it's because I wholeheartedly endorse taking your exam paper apart. I like to take my exams apart, find the different sections, finish those, stack them away as if they are completely done and removed from my mind. Makes it easier to get to the rest. At the end, I staple them back together. I find that this is a little mental trick that helps me put things away, categorize and box them up, and to accurately, or rather get through things in a timely fashion. That then leaves me with enough time to get through the stuff I maybe need to think about a bit more. Thirdly, similar to that previous point, allot certain amounts of time to each question. Any serious exam, you should know exactly what is going to be asked in terms of categorized questions. So you should know whether there's a multiple choice section or let's say a reading comprehension or a design question, something that you have to be creative for. You should know what those are prior to taking your exam. Have a certain amount of time set aside for each of those. If it so happens that you cross the time that you've allotted for that, stop what you're doing, move on to the next thing. Hopefully, you'll be able to finish the other sections with enough time in order to come back at the end and finish off the sections that you were unable to complete. Finally, what I would say is, regardless of the exam, regardless of how accurately you feel like you've dealt with each question, always leave yourself 5 minutes at the end. Budget in that 5 minutes and go through your paper. Make sure that you haven't skipped questions. And then additionally, it's the silly, small mistakes that you only pick up on a second reading, especially with social science and language-based arts or subjects, sorry. Your wording matters. Your spelling matters very much often. Go through it, make sure it's clean, make sure it's concise, make sure you have hit all the points that you were going for, and then you can breathe a sigh of relief at the end and you won't really have that anxiety waiting for those marks because you've checked it out and you know that you were right.
Thank you so much. I definitely think do not underestimate the power of leaving that extra bit at the end of your exam to go over your exam again and check that you haven't left anything out. Even if you've maybe used, I think, whiteout or Tipex to make a correction, go back and check that you haven't waited for it to dry and left out the answer. Rather use a pen if you need to make corrections instead of using like a whiteout. So after the exam, I think that it's also one of the most neglected aspects that students face after the exams when they don't actually reflect and review what they have just gone through. So yeah, students are often so relieved that the exam is done that they're just quickly racing out of the exam room, going to chat to their friends, going to compare answers, whatever it is, and they don't actually acknowledge that they've just written an exam, that it's not just about getting their knowledge onto paper, but it's about actually absorbing that knowledge as well for future use. So Tom, do you have any sort of comments or ideas about what students can do after the exam to be more mindful of what they've just gone through?
Celebrate! Again, with this, it's not so much a strategy or a something to do as much as it is a view or a philosophy to adopt. I think with exams, half the stress is before and then half the stress is after while you're waiting for your outcomes. It's quite a horrible time, especially that first lesson back when you're waiting for the teacher to come in and they have a stack of papers and they're either frowning or smiling and you're kind of waiting for that mark. The thing you really have to do with exams is, again, get that piece of perspective. Recognize what they are for. They are not there to be the ultimate arbiter of your success or your failure. The majority of the exams that you will take in your life are really just there to give you an understanding of how you're doing, of where you are. I know that as university culture has become more ubiquitous in society, we're placing more and more value on the number on the reports at the end of the day. But the true purpose of education, the real point of being at school, about doing these subjects, about learning all this stuff, is really learning to learn. The point is that you're training your mind, that you are strengthening it, that you are fortifying it, that you are developing a set of mental skills that you will use later in life when you really do discover what you're going to do with the rest of your life and what you're going to build as a person. You need to recognize that the exam is really a part of the process in building that up. So ultimately, after an exam, what you should be recognizing is the skills and the abilities and the thought patterns that you took on and that you exhibited throughout the exam. The primary thing to do is gain the correct perspective about what you've been through, and then hopefully take those lessons, learn from them, and build towards your next exam session and have an even more successful one in the future.
Thank you so much, Tom, for joining us today. Your views have been really, really useful. And thank you so much to the students and the Greenfield families at home who are watching. To our Greenfield students, we wish you all the best for your upcoming exams. Please do try the strategies that we've spoken about today, and good luck.